Zooming in. All right, everyone, welcome. We're here for what is, just for the edification of the members here with us, this is actually the third meeting the Speaker of the House and the Senate President this summer, following the tragic death of Agent Davis Martinez, asked the Select Committee from Judiciary, Appropriations, Judicial Proceedings, and B&T to meet to try to get to the bottom of what happened that led to the tragic death, and also what the agency was doing to prevent this type of tragedy moving forward. We did have 2 meetings of that Select Committee during the interim. We did not feel that we had all the questions answered, and so Chair Clippinger and I felt that it was necessary to do a 3rd meeting. Hopefully we're not going to start from scratch here today because we have had a couple of meetings. I do see that the agency has provided a memo this go around trying to sort of get at the questions that were remaining, which is good. But we're going to invite them forward after Chair Clippinger.
Good afternoon to everyone, and as Chairman Barnes said, this is the 3rd meeting that we've had on after what was an incredibly tragic event, where we have been following up on what the agency has been doing to make parole and probation agents safer as they do their jobs on behalf of the people of the state of Maryland. I'm going to keep it relatively short. We're in this room for the first time. It's quite something. So we'll get to a point where there are questions here later on, and I'll just say that you might have to send up a flare or something like that if you want to ask a question, but we certainly look forward to that part of the hearing as well. So, Madam Secretary, if you would like to come up, we'll get started.
Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Chair Clippinger, and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you to discuss the progress that the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services has made to improve the agent safety while enhancing operational efficiency. For the record, my name is Carolyn J. Scruggs, and I'm the Secretary of the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. With me today is our Deputy Secretary of Administration, Joseph Sadal. I appreciate you sharing your concerns to be addressed before today's briefing. I also want to express my thanks to those of you that I had the opportunity to meet with. A memo covering the concerns brought up during the last briefing, along with additional details on DPP's ongoing progress, was shared with you in preparation for today's meeting. Today, I would like to address several of the key concerns that were raised. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge the Martinez family and would like to share with this body that the department's request has been approved to include Agent Martinez's name as inclusion to the National Law Enforcement Memorial in Washington, D.C. I invite each of you to come to the dedication service that will take place on May 13th at an annual candlelight visual, which is National Police Week. On behalf of the department, the family has received additional support through Correctional Peace Officers Foundation and other resources. To begin with PINs and employee positions. As of today, there are currently 1,092 PINs assigned to the Department of Parole and Probation. A complete breakdown of those PINs can be found on pages 1 through 3 of your memo. The FY26 budget for DPP contains $5 million for additional PINs. That equals to an estimate 60 PINs based on the type of position filled. This is the state's first phase of investment in rebuilding DPP pending the outcomes of the current caseload analysis. The results of the independent caseload study will be completed by the end of February. We are prepared to put in a supplemental budget request for additional PINs based on the caseload study and our ability to hire. This will remain a priority for the department. agency safety policies and changes. Policy modifications were shared with ASME on December 6 after integral legal and executive reviews were completed. The policies updated were Emergency Preparedness Action Plan, OC spray, body armor, joint absconder home contact teams, staff meetings, occupational health and safety, employee threat notification, call-in procedures, and sexual offender home contacts. Each of these policies were included in the memo you received. At the request of ASME, we are bargaining these policies, which unfortunately delays the implementation. We are optimistic that this joint venture will lead to the best result for the department and its employees. Safety equipment and procurement. As of today, fitted protective vests have been ordered for 467 agents. Agents who were unable to attend the initially scheduled vest fitting dates are still in the progress of being fitted. Fitting dates are set for the remainder of this month and through February, and agents are already scheduled. Per Atlantic Tactical, delivery of vests is between 60 to 75 days from the date of order. I am pleased to announce that DPP has received the first order of vests ahead of schedule and anticipates shipments beginning the week of February 3rd. The third-party investigation. The department has met with the union to find an agreed-upon investigative organization to conduct a third-party incident report into the death of Agent Martinez. Shortly before this hearing, the union sent a scope of work outlining their desired requirements of the investigation and potential organizations that could conduct it. I will reach out to each organization to determine their availability and cost associated with conducting the investigation. Home contact visits. On June 12, 2024, we received written communication from ASME requesting home contacts remain virtual until a new policy was agreed upon. I am happy to share that communication with you upon request. To be clear, in-person office visits have not stopped. Agents assigned to sex offender caseloads have maintained contact with supervised individuals by engaging in face-to-face office contacts and video face-to-face contacts. From June 2024 through December 15, 2024, over 64,000 face-to-face office and video positive contacts were made with sex offenders. The full monthly breakdown of both office and video positive visits can be found on page 15 of your memo. DPP's operational manual includes a mandatory visit policy stipulating that an agent must complete a home contact prior to requesting an absconding warrant. Critical need contacts and absconder searches are being completed by DPSCS's Warrant Apprehension Unit, the Intel and Investigation Division, and the DPP Safety Support Specialists. Although Maryland statute does not specifically mandate home visits, the Correctional Services Articles 6202 and 6215 require adherence to provisions of the Interstate Compact. Maryland is a member of the Federal Interstate Commission for Adult Offender Supervision, which oversees the movement and supervision of probationers and parolees across the state lines, as well as D.C., the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. States that do not adhere to these rules may face corrective measures and penalties. Pursuant to these rules, the receiving state must detail how the supervising officer determined the individual under supervision was deemed as an absconder and conduct a field contact at the last known residence in submission of the absconding violation report. Pages 15 and 16 of the memo provide a full breakdown of the absconder home visits and the mandatory home visit policy I just mentioned. The Warrant Apprehension Unit is comprised of 37 sworn police officers who are tasked with apprehending offenders who have violated conditions of their supervision. The Warrant Apprehension Unit operations have remained in full effect since home contacts were paused and continue to operate as normal. Support staff shortages. There are a total of 111 administrative pens, and there are 8 vacancies. You can find a complete breakdown of this on pages 3 and 4 of your memo. The phone app for the DPP agents. The Fluid Mobility Tracking app was deployed to DPP state-issued phones on December 6. The department is bargaining the terms of use with the union. The use of location services was addressed in the updated call-in procedures section in the DPP Operationals Manual provided to the union for review in December. The proposed policy outlines the requirements for field staff and management teams to know the locations of all personnel assigned to conduct home and employment contacts, as well as the steps to take when deployed staff have not reported from the last known location. The American Parole and Probation Association standards. While APA does not set standards for reporting, it published its first draft recommendation of best practices for community supervision standards in June of 2024. The recommendations were published for public comment nationwide, and it is anticipated that recommendations will be finalized in June of this year. You can find descriptions of those recommendations in your memo on pages 18 through 21. Partnerships with police agencies. DPP leadership reached out to state and local enforcement agencies in an effort to establish home contact partnerships. To date, we have extended requests for partnerships with 12 agencies statewide. A list of the agencies are found on page 17 of your memo. To date, we have confirmed partnership with Baltimore City Police, and starting in February, we will begin a partnership pilot with the Montgomery County Police Department. Body-worn cameras. DPP agents require statutory authority for the use of body-worn cameras. The FY26 budget includes funding for body-worn cameras. We have secured private sponsorship for legislation that would grant the DPP statutory authority required to use these cameras. A current bill draft has been shared with the union. Our court liaison officers. There are 11 agents and 1 supervisor that are responsible for handling violation of probation hearings in the Baltimore City Circuit Court and Wabash District Court. Since the implementation of the Justice Reinvestment Act in October of 2017, the volume of VOP hearings in the Baltimore City Circuit Court has significantly decreased due to the imposition of graduated interventions and sanctions in response to technical violations of supervision. With the work reduction of handling court cases per month, DPP leadership has determined a reallocation of resources to balance caseloads is appropriate. 3 DPP agents have been reassigned to reduce sex offender caseloads in Baltimore County. We continue to evaluate the need to reassign staff. Court liaison agents average between 25 to 30 court cases per month. These agents are responsible solely for attendance at VOP hearings on cases that are assigned to the supervision agent of record. A chart providing the average number of hearings held is shown on page 5 of your memo, which shows the decrease in the number of hearings held. Mental health support for agents. The DPSCS Office of Communication provides all employees with a monthly employee wellness newsletter. The newsletter provides all DPSCS employees with the information on medical plan, emotional wellness resources, contact information for wellness navigators within the department's Human Resources Division, mindfulness information, and information for the statewide Maryland Cares Access to Mental Health Support. Maryland Cares Mental Health Program is administered by Behavioral Health Services. It is a self-referral program, and the information shared is confidential. As such, DPSCS does not have data related to employee access. DPSCS employees, including DPP, may access mental health services through the EAP, Employee Assistance Referral Program. The EAP process allows a member of the management to submit a request to the Human Resources for this service. Under the EAP, the state pays for 5 counseling sessions through the statewide behavioral health services provider. The Community Investment Unit within DPSCS created a health and wellness program and committee in order to provide healthier and more positive work environments through various wellness initiative events and resources. On November 26, DPSCS employees were notified about the program and encouraged to participate. The first meeting was held December 10th. Led by over 100 DPSCS staff members, the program is a trauma-informed initiative utilizing best practices and informed practices designed for the staff members, contractors, and leaders of DPSCS to address physical, emotional, and mental needs within the department. With a motto of relationship comes first, we strive to encourage all DPSCS members to take care of themselves, mind, body, and spirit by offering these tools, resources, and events designated for positive impact in their personal and professional lives. In addition, the Health and Wellness Committee will also dedicate activities to ensure that trauma-informed care continues to be at the center of programming for incarcerated and supervised individuals, as the work of DPS is driven by those within our custody and supervision. Thank you again for the opportunity to present this critical information. I encourage you to review the information in the briefing documents, and I am happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I feel a little bit like third time's a charm here. We got much more thorough answers, I believe, this time around. Your memo certainly is much more thorough than it's been, so we appreciate that very much. Still may be some questions, though, so, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Kaufman.
Yes, nice to see you again, Secretary Scruggs.
You as well, sir.
One of the major goals of Governor Moore was to fix what he saw hollowing out of state government. So I'm wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about the impact, and I assume it's negative, that this tragedy has had on recruitment and retention of congressional officers. Also, several times in your testimony, you said you were negotiating with our brothers and sisters in labor, and I'm just wondering how long you think that is going to take before these improvements can be made. How long will the negotiations be? Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Thank you for your question. I'm going to answer it backwards because I'm going to let my DSO give you the statistics related to hiring, which I think will shock you. As relations with our partners in labor, we still work very closely with them. What the MOU states is that they have 30 days to review any policy review and 20 days to request bargaining. In my attempt to make sure that we're working with them and that it is a collaborative effort, you can see that I have not imposed after 30 days, which I can do, but continue to work with them so that we can come to a uniform front and say that we have worked together to achieve this goal. So we have received requests for bargaining on several of those policies that have been mentioned, and we will begin that bargaining with them immediately. And for the as far as the response and individuals not wanting to work for the department due to this unfortunate tragedy, I think it's important that we provide you with some numbers because we do have some graduating classes coming. So we have still had individuals applying, not at the rate that I would love to see it, but they have been applying. So I'm going to ask DS Sadell to give you those numbers.
Howdy. Yeah, so as of right now, I don't know if I can agree with the assumption that there's been a decrease. That's not something the statistics have actually shown as far as applications. I think generally applications have been fairly steady. As of right now, just to give you some context of where we're at from a hiring perspective, we have 35 parole and probation 1 agent positions vacant. There are, I think we hired 18 by the end of this month. There's another 17 on track for February, another 17 in March. So we're hopeful to be able to fill all of the vacant positions. Obviously, that requires proper context. You get a new vacant position anytime somebody does resign or retire. But what we've tried to develop within our background process, within our recruitment process, is a continuous flow and the ability for, if somebody is within background and they drop out for whatever reason that might be, we have another candidate in the pipeline able to immediately fill in and continue to hire these people.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And if I can add, be mindful that some of the delay in hiring is not always on the end of the department. Those individuals that we're hiring may have other jobs as well, some that may require longer periods of time that they want to give notice, or they may have family events. We're seeing that as we continue to recruit individuals as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Madam Secretary and team. I really appreciate your thoughtful response to the questions we had and the collaboration we've had since our last meeting. I've also appreciated your team's engagement, particularly with the local, because that was one of the strong concerns that we heard from the people on the ground. From going through the memo, I saw a number of instances of you all meeting with the union, and that is deeply appreciated. I just wanted to know, is there any clear policy that we can say is being implemented from those meetings? I'm glad that we are starting to have that consistent level, particularly high level in leadership, to meet with them, but I want to know if there's any direct policies we can point to that is an outcome of that. Thank you very much.
We have not gotten to a point where we are ready to implement one of those critical, non-critical policies that I have enumerated in your memo, but I think that we are very close with a few of them, and hopefully within the next couple of weeks you'll see some of those roll out. We're happy to share them with you as soon as we are both in agreement. DSA?
Yeah, just to give you some sort of a timeline, AFSCME was able to provide their initial comments, edits, red lines to the policies that were sent Wednesday. And so we're now, or last Wednesday, so we're now at a point where we're trying to schedule those initial bargaining sessions. I suspect it's likely going to be the first week of February. We obviously need time to review all those edits and make sure that we can put a proper counterproposal. As the Secretary said, I think we're very hopeful that the goal will be we'll come to a conclusion that betters the entire department and the safety of all involved.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Madam Secretary. I would agree with the comments of my colleagues. I know from the last two hearings, this has been really helpful to see this written out and have this in advance. I appreciate that. And also, I know your team sent a number of documents to the Joint Audit Committee based on our recent hearing. I know we'll have a lot of questions on that. It's probably better for the budget hearing, but just appreciate that you sent us all the information in a timely fashion when we asked for it. I just had a question about two issues in here. Just want to confirm, because I know this was something we talked about in the December hearing. So you all have agreed, and the governor's team has agreed to investigate, to open this up to a third-party investigation. Can you just expand upon, and I love also that you said you want to engage with OPEGA. I think that's a great idea to use state resources as well. But can you just talk us through the timeline of when you hope to have an outside entity engaged and on board to do this investigation?
Absolutely. So a few days ago, we met with the union and the union representatives to discuss whether or not we could come in agreement with who that organization would be, that we would move forward with that investigation. I asked them during that time if they would provide me by today a scope of work what they would like to see come out of that investigation. I received that shortly before coming to this hearing today. Based on those individuals, namely APA as well as ACA, I am now going to reach out to those organizations to see their availability and see if there is a cost associated with doing that investigation. That will then dictate us based on, I guess, procurement laws that my DSA can talk to if that's involved, or how we move forward with that. And then we will hopefully come to an agreement to choose one of those individuals within the next week or so, and we'll move forward with beginning that investigation.
I know we had talked a little bit about this earlier in the fall, about the partner visits to make sure, so obviously one of the big issues that came out of the review was that agents felt uncomfortable in certain instances going by themselves. So just in the partnership with the local police force, and obviously I'm most concerned with the Montgomery County Police Department. So our police department is dealing with some staffing shortages. So, I mean, the initial concern I have, I guess, is twofold. One, who is theoretically going to be paying for this additional coverage? What happens if you have an agency where they may not have the coverage to be able to do this? And is there a long-term plan within parole, as we had discussed earlier, to do these visits jointly with other agents as opposed to local law enforcement?
So thank you again for your question. Know that all of those answers will have to be outlined in one of the policies that we're reviewing with the union, the absconder policies. However, for example, with Montgomery County, it is a pilot that we're going to start with them. With Baltimore City, it's not cost involved with them at this time, and knowing that's the largest jurisdiction where we have supervisees. But we will continue to use our warrant apprehension unit, that is a full commission law enforcement officers within our department, to supplement that. When we did take a deep dive and kind of look generally at how frequently would we be using these law enforcement entities, it only looks like we're going to really need their required use maybe 10 to 15 times a month on an average. That's where we're looking. So many of them did not feel that was significant, where we had others that just told us they wouldn't be able to support. I will say again that I did ask the colonel to take this before the chiefs and Sheriff's Association, and it was stressed how important it is, because MSP is also one of our partners that's willing to help, and the chiefs and sheriffs had told us that they would do everything in their powers to assist us as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and once again, thank you, Madam Secretary. It was great speaking with you recently, you and your staff. I see they're reflected in the audience. Even though we had a long conversation, I see I missed a couple of questions. So I just want to talk a little bit about officer safety, because that's what brought us here today. So in the concept, can you give me an idea of workers' comp and how many officers are injured in the line of duty as a result of their role out in the field? And I have a follow-up question when you answer that one.
I do not have that statistical information related to workers' comp, but I'm happy to get that information and give it to you.
Okay, thank you. Can you also give me an idea of what type of powers a probation parole officer have? Do they have police powers? What type of powers do they have as they're out in the field conducting these visits?
They are not sworn officers. They are not commissioned police officers. They actually go through an academy that teaches them, and it's a fairly extensive 6-week academy that teaches them basically the rules related to parole and probation and supervising those agencies. They learn defense tactics during that. They learn report writing. They learn ethics. So in no way are they comparable to a law enforcement entity at this point.
Sure. So what type of powers do they have? Do they have any powers, no powers, some powers?
Are you relating to powers to arrest? There are no powers to arrest. That's vested in the warrant apprehension unit.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, I don't think we have any other questions, ma'am. Oh, I'm sorry.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here. You mentioned something, I didn't hear the beginning of the sentence, nor could I find it in the report, although I'm sure it's in the report, about knowing the location of all PMP officers and to have information as to when they haven't reported. Could you refer me back to that, or either repeat
I believe
that?
you're referring to the Fluidity app, the app that is to go on their phones so that we are able to detect their locations. The policy associated with that application is also being bargained with the union at this point. Some of the things that we want to ensure is that the staff know how to turn that app off when they are not working, and then resume turning that app on when they are. Other things within that policy will dictate when the supervisor is notified, because they're tracking them through that app, and to ensure that their safety is always paramount.
Thank you. I have one quick follow-up. As it stands now, do you have any idea when home visits may resume?
What I would say to you is that it is very important first that we make sure that we are in line with our union partners on these policies, that there is a staff awareness and training done for everyone on these policies, and that all of the safety equipment is deployed. I do not intend to send staff back out into an environment when they are not fully trained. One of the things that we've also done that is extremely different for parole and probation, unlike the DOC side that I came up on, is we have begun this year a 40-hour in-service training, something they were not receiving. That will allow them annual training of defense tactics, of safety methods, so that they know how to perform when they go out. So until we get, and we've already started that 40-hour training in service, until we get the policies in place and the staff awareness done, we will continue to utilize our warrant apprehension unit, our intel and investigative team. And we may come to a point that as we start to receive our vests in, that we can deploy smaller phases or units of individuals out. We'll definitely look at that as we continue to move forward.
Would you consider, given the MOUs that you have with some of the law enforcement agencies, perhaps resuming in increments?
So the one MOU we have is with Baltimore City. Montgomery is a pilot. We don't have a signed MOU with them yet. And Baltimore City is something that we've honestly been doing for years. Baltimore City will tell you that. They have helped us for years, and we pick up the phone and call, and they will meet an agent or go out with them. So it is nothing uncommon about what has been happening in Baltimore City.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, Madam Secretary. Thank you for your presentation. I wanted to follow up just briefly on what my colleague, Delegate Solomon, was talking about with the internal investigative unit. You stated that you had received a recommended scope from the union about the unit. Is it possible that you can share some of that? I know you just got it today, so it'd be nice.
If you would please give me an opportunity to read it myself, because we may want to update. We certainly don't want to change anything the union record has provided, but we may want to add additional to it, and then happy to share that scope if we can with you. Yeah.
Awesome. And I understand that you're dealing with, you said the APA and the ACA, the national organizations that could help you with this internal investigation. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on whether there can be some sort of standing Maryland agency, understanding that we passed Senate Bill 134 last year and that we have the Ombudsman's Office for Corrections, if that's something that you think could potentially be expanded to these types of issues outside of just specific corrections. I know their scope for the first year is only supposed to be at Jessup, but just thinking forward, once that office is up and running and they've shown that they are effective, I'm wondering what other areas of the DPSCS system, including this one, might be ripe for that type of an independent agency to oversee and to investigate.
Thank you for the question. Very open to the ombudsman coming in, and we've already experienced it, like you said, in Jessup. One of the things that we find is we align very well with the ombudsman, that there are some challenges that need to be changed, and certainly explore other opportunities in community supervision and pretrial, as well as DOC, that where she's already focused. So we're very open to expanding that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here today and assisting throughout the interim with issues that are going on in the district. I wanted to inquire with you, is there a minimum, let me back that up. When you have your agents go out, your officers go out, is there a certain type of person on parole that an agent would not go to? Like, it's a standard saying if someone has this type of level of security issue, then I'm not going to send out one agent, I'll send out two, or there's just a standard where they won't even make a home visit an option. That was one of my areas of inquiry. If you could answer that one, and then I just
So
have one
there are
other.
levels of supervision, from high to low levels. A low-level supervisee, may have been put on parole or probation by the judge, and it's unsupervised. So those individuals, we're not going out to see. However, they're still part of our count, part of the statistics associated with parole and probation. With our higher level, the ones that you see that, again, that we require to go out are our absconders, and that is because we are part of that Federal Interstate Compact Commission, and the sanction, we can be sanctioned if we don't do those absconder visits. That is indeed why the warrant apprehension unit went out. Again, the warrant apprehension unit is not new to parole and probation. They have been going out with agents historically, especially in our COMET section. COMET is where our sex offenders are overseen. And the agent is actually allowed to gauge the violence based on the case notes. So there should be a review with both the agent and the supervisor to determine whether or not there's a partnership, whether or not local law enforcement needs to be called to go out, or whether or not a virtual visit will suffice as well. So there are really some decision-making components within the case that will dictate whether or not one or more person goes out together. But there's nothing that stops them from partnering to go out together, if that's what you're seeing.
Yes, that's where I was going with that one. And then you had indicated that you had 60 pens. Is that agency-wide, or we're specifically talking about?
That's specific
Your-
for DPP, 60 pens for DPP.
And then my last question, Mr. Chair, in regards to the ombudsman, I noticed in the budget there's an expansion of like 13 more positions. Is that, have you already identified specifically what they are for, or you're just making the assumption that we're already going to be at an expansion that's necessary?
Are you referring to the contractual conversions within
Yes.
DPP?
Okay.
Yeah, so those are, I think the goal right now is to put those into additional agent pins. But we've got a variety of different units within the division, so there's agents, intake reviewers, drink driving monitors. So what we're going to do is try to evaluate where the need is greatest at any given time and make sure those conversions occur and fill them up as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Can you give me an idea of how many people are on probation parole in the state of Maryland? And follow-up to that would be about how many offices do you have, and are they open for them who are reporting in person?
Our offices are open for business. There are a little over 40,000 community people on parole and probation in the state of Maryland. But just because they're on parole and probation does not mean that they're required to see. I don't have the total offices. I've been all over the state, but I'll give you get you the total offices. But as we used to say, they are from mountain to shore. We have numerous offices, but I'll get you a total number.
Thank you.
I think at this point, we don't have any more questions. Madam Secretary, the chair and I have spoken. I don't think we'll need a fourth hearing, given the answers we've gotten today, so thank you for that. That's not to say we will not be continuing to pay attention to the progress you're making. I think both committees will. And of course, you're going to have a budget hearing on February 7th with the Appropriations Committee, so any updates you can provide mixed in with your regular budget response would be great at that time as well. With that.
You both.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Okay. We do have AFSCME, so
Yeah.
Denise Gilmore's here. And
All right, good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Chair Clippinger, and members of the Appropriations.
Would you mind moving the microphone a little closer to you?
Closer, sure.
because,
Can everyone hear me?
a
All right, very good. Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Chair Clippinger, and members of the Appropriations and Judiciary Committee. My name is Denise Gilmore, and I'm the Legislative and Political Director for AFSCME Maryland Council 3. We are proud to represent the employees at the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, including in the Division of Parole and Probation. I just want to begin by extending just heartfelt thank you for the role that you've played in providing oversight over this process. You know, I will hand it over to President Robinson here in a minute, but we certainly feel like we have been bringing up many of these issues for years in the department, and it often fell to deaf ears, both in parole and probation leadership and DPSCS leadership. There was a alarming lack of policies and procedures that predated this tragic incident that occurred in May with Agent Martinez. And then immediately following his tragic death, we immediately began outreach to try and do a review of what occurred to try and prevent it from happening again. For months, we were sidetracked. In October, I think October 24th, a briefing was called. We started to get some communication from the department then. We had another follow-up hearing scheduled in December. We got even more follow-up communication then. We believe in our heart of hearts that we would not be where we are even today with the department had it not been for your continued oversight and for staying on this. So I really want to thank you. We would not have gotten here without you, so thank you. Now, I say that it shouldn't have required you either. We are the collective bargaining agent. We are talking about working conditions here. The ability to stay safe when you work, the ability to get things like basic incident data shouldn't require a grievance. It shouldn't require going to OAH to get the data on when folks are getting injured at work. These are requirements that federal OSHA already places onto employers, but unfortunately we've had to do that here. We shouldn't have to put in demand to bargains when technology comes out on agent phones that starts tracking them at their home at midnight sometimes. Like, that should be worked out before that technology comes out on people's cell phones. We have the right to negotiate that. We have the right to negotiate the types and caseload surveys we're going to do. We believe that if you really want to have a true and accurate picture of the caseload and workload that is happening in the department, you should absolutely be looping in your frontline staff. We have examples of where we've done that in other agencies, including going around offices, interviewing staff, coming up with mutually agreed upon vendors. And finally, I'll say, we shouldn't find out for the first time at a briefing like we are here today that a very important issue to us, a third-party investigation, which, we called for immediately after the, tragic Davis-Martinez incident. The vendor that we choose for that is important. We checked with our national union if they had suggestions. We brought somebody forward, and we're finding out today that apparently the ACA is doing it. That's not what we wanted. So I think we still have a ways to go to work on the relationship and bargaining. It's great to meet, but we want to definitely make sure that we are taking into account the voices of our frontline staff that are out in the field and actually putting their bodies in the line. Just with that, I will say I do appreciate that, we are working together now to finalize these remaining policies, particularly on home visits. I am going to hand it over to President Renica, who is a parole and probation agent and knows this world certainly way better than many of us. But I just hope that we can continue to get your support in ensuring that the agency has the resources that they need. They've lost about 200 PINs since 2010. There's some fluctuations on caseloads certainly that have happened to that. I don't know if it's to the extent to justify losing 200 pins. I mean, agents have complained about high caseloads for the duration of that. I don't think we've gotten that right. But we certainly appreciate your support in getting these folks the resources that they need. All we want to do is make sure that this tragic incident never happens again, and that we are keeping the community safe. So thank you very much for your continued oversight, and I will hand it over to President Robinson.
Good afternoon, senators and delegates. My name is Rainika Robinson, and I'm the proud president of ASME Local 3661, representing community corrections across Maryland. I am also a parole and probation agent who shares the frustration, pain, and dismay of my colleagues over DPSCS's leadership's slow progress and long-term neglect of community corrections. At our last hearing, I described our progress as baby steps, and today I must report that progress feels stagnant, driven only by legislative pressure to compel the department to do the right thing and prioritize policies that protect staff and the community we serve. We are, however, appreciative of the progress we have seen. In June of 2024, we successfully reached an agreement with the governor's office and DPSCS to conduct a third-party investigation. And on Tuesday, we met with the department to collaborate on initiating this third-party investigation into the tragic murder of Agent Martinez. On January 16th, we also met with Deputy Secretary Sedtal to share our vision for the department and agreed on next steps to explore this vision. Yet despite these conversations, we remain deeply concerned about the quality and urgency of policy improvements. For example, the department has not implemented proactive policies designed to keep us safe. Their joint absconder contacts policy requires agents to maintain contact with the office by calling their immediate supervisor or designee within 10 minutes of completing each scheduled home contact. Supervisors are then tasked with monitoring the team's location by checking their state-issued cell phone every 30 minutes. While it is encouraging that the agency recognized the need to establish standards, we've repeatedly asked them to consider providing agents with panic buttons or radios monitored by police communication operators, enabling real-time supervision. We are also alarmed that the department has yet to establish a use of force policy or respond to our request for updated ballistic vests for the home detention officers. These officers currently rely on outdated vests that offer only 5 by 7 inches of protection against sharp objects, which is unacceptable. But let me be clear, solving these problems is not rocket science. The solutions lie in investing the resources already embedded within our structure. Our vision for the future includes fully staffed parole and probation offices. With sufficient support staff in all 36 field offices, agents could focus on supervising cases rather than handling administrative tasks. Reducing caseloads, such as the 202 sex offenders currently managed by one agent in the Silver Spring office. This would allow us to shift focus to high-risk clients who pose real threats to public safety. Expanding the home detention unit. With just 11 home detention officers serving the entire state, the division is forced to rely heavily on law enforcement for home visits. Increased staffing would reduce this dependency and improve public safety outcomes. Providing modern equipment and policies. Home detention officers need updated ballistic vests, and the department must establish a clear use of force policy to ensure safety and accountability. And strengthening our police communication operators. Dedicated operators monitoring field staff in real time would drastically enhance safety. Currently, these professionals are stretched too thin, managing administrative duties that should be handled by support staff. We imagine a future where parole and probation agents can conduct safer home visits, supported by properly equipped home detention officers, monitored in real time, and governed by thoughtful policies designed to protect both staff and the public. This is not a distant dream. It is a vision well within our reach. And with your continued support, we can build this future together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Denise, you and I are often at odds on a lot of different issues, but on this particular one, I just want to go on record thanking you guys and your staff for your advocacy on this very important issue. So.
Thank you, chairs, and thank you, panel, for coming in to testify. Could you elaborate a little bit more on using law enforcement officers to conduct home monitoring?
Yeah, so I've been an agent, and I have never gone on a home visit with an officer. That hasn't, and speaking with a lot of our members, that's not like a reality. We don't often go on home visits with officers. But our agency does have like a unit, the home detention unit, who go out to homes. They're not law enforcement right now, but they do carry and, have more protections. And if we strengthen that unit and we put the resources into the unit that we already have within our agency, they could accompany us on our home visits.
Thank you very much.
Sharing, and I'm really concerned about a number of things, but you just said something that just strikes me. Are those individuals sworn in that unit that you just referred to?
Sorry. So they're not sworn. They were going through a 6-month police academy. The agency did decide to shorten that, so they're not sworn officers.
But they are allowed to carry.
Yes, they are correction officers who do function in the community that are armed. They do home visits, just like parole and probation does home visits. They also, when they go to the home, if there's a client who if there's a client who needs to be detained, they will detain that client and take them back to the institution.
And you alluded to technologies that you thought might assist with this process. Could you be more specific about the technologies that you think should be implemented in a faster manner?
Yeah, so one of the main things that we think would be really important are just radios. Like our home detention unit, they have radios that they take into the community, which do have buttons that they can push to signify that they have a emergency. And those radios are actually monitored by police communication operators who they call in when they go into the home, and then they let them know when they leave the home. And if they take too long, those communication operators can check on them. So that's one of the main technologies that we would love to have, which we already have, we're using within the department. And then, we've even asked for things like panic buttons, just something so that in real time, we can alert that we need help. Because right now, with their policies, it's contingent upon someone checking their phone every 30 minutes to see if I sent a message.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you both for your presentation. My fraternity brother took some of the words right out of my mouth, my colleague, Delegate Phillips. But I wanted to know, you would have to agree that a use of force policy is something that is unique to a law enforcement agency or a law enforcement officer, isn't that right?
We would say that, use of force policies, there should be use of force policies that are specific to each agency.
Well, that's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is, isn't it true that across the country, any agency that uses a use of force policy is a law enforcement agency with officers that are sworn to effect law enforcement?
No, that's not true.
Where does that exist?
Well, like our correction officers use of force policy.
Right, they're sworn law enforcement officers, correct?
Well, our correction officers aren't sworn.
we might be getting caught up in semantics a little bit. I mean, I don't think they're technically sworn, but they
No,
are,
they're
in
absolutely
law
sworn.
enforcement.
They get trained by the training commission.
Correct.
They are law enforcement
Correct.
officers,
They are
whereas
they're
parole and
law
probation
enforcement.
agents, are not sworn law enforcement officers,
I don't know if we're
correct?
going to argue about sworn, unsworn. Is there a question?
If
Yeah,
you could help us with the specific question.
The question is about why agents that are not sworn law enforcement officers should have a use of force policy that is unique to sworn law enforcement officers.
So I think what we are going for here are policies that can help agents figure out what to do in the event that they are in a situation where something arises in the field that would require an intervention.
And I get that.
And
And I think that that's
you know,
what you all should be asking for as opposed to a use of force policy. There should be no overreach in these requests. If there should be a policy where agents know what they can do and how they can protect themselves, maybe a defensiveness, a defensive training. But I think using a use of force policy is overreach. Could you also talk about?
Can I make a
Wait
clarifying
second,
point on that? Because I think
Could I just ask a question?
Yeah, but I just want to make sure that you understand. So we're talking about for use of force, we are specific to the home detention officers. They are correctional officers, so it would be appropriate for them to have a use of force policy. We are also asking for agents to have policies and procedures for when they are in the field and encounter a situation where an intervention is required. Regardless of if the worker is a correctional officer, if the worker is an agent, workers should be trained in how to deal with incidents that could pop up in their workplaces. That's a responsibility that all employers have.
I agree with that. Could you tell us what independent agency you requested or suggested and the scope of the independent investigative unit?
So the group that we suggested was the GL group. GL group. It was recommended to us based on work that they had done in some other states.
Investigative unit?
So the scope, and we're happy to follow up and share this with members of the committee too, but we suggested the primary objectives of this review are to assess the adequacy and adherence to existing policies and procedures, identify gaps in policy, training, equipment, technology, and staffing that may have contributed to the incident, evaluate agency actions before, during, and after the incident, and provide actionable recommendations to enhance safety and operational efficiency.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Just briefly, is there a national work group agency standardization that deals with, I mean, this was a horrible tragedy, and it was kind of like a confluence of bad things that happened, and Agent Martinez died. But I'm just wondering if there's some group that basically can analyze what happened and then what is good procedure for these type of situations, because you never know, but you got to be prepared. And so I'm just it's kind of taking what my colleague said and just kind of saying, is there sort of like the gold standard that you could work with the department to basically know that you've got good policy and procedures? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We always recommend, and this is a, best practice, but it would have been nice for there to have been a real, serious incident review with the union after this. But absent that, I'll say we're still waiting for full investigation for, this fatality to be released from the state's Occupational Safety and Health Agency. I mean, these are the types of things that a fatality investigation oftentimes looks into too, and I know, we're still waiting for a motion investigation on this too.
All right, that appears to be all the questions that the committees have today, unless anybody want to jump in at the last second. But we thank you very much for coming out and speaking to us with us today. This has been a joint hearing of the House Judiciary and Appropriations Committee, and thank you all for attending.